Senator, nice to talk to you again, sir.
Greta, great to see you.
Senator, in plain English, what is artificial intelligence?
Wow. That's part of the challenge, because in plain English, it means a whole lot of different things to different people. It is basically collecting a whole lot of data from a whole bunch of sources, and then through a computer model trying to predict. It's really not magic. It's predicting what would be the next word in a sentence based upon an analysis of a whole lot of data. So that's where somebody say, write me a talk the way Greta would make this pitch. It analyzes all this data and then literally predicts the kind of word choices based upon all the analysis of your speech patterns and input from before. It has an enormous power to do really good things, to help people be more efficient in their jobs, to turn into this kind of personalized assistant on a whole host of information. You think about your personalized, Ask Alexa kind of opportunity now. This would be exponentially greater, but there are huge, huge concerns. I mean, what happens is that data is biased? What happens if somebody could, frankly, on a cybersecurity basis, break in and manipulate? What happens in a world where why would anyone ever go out and, for example, in cooking, ever publish new recipes in a food and wine magazine if that data was all absorbed into one of these so-called large language models, which is a ChatGPT, and somehow that information is spit out as a partial answer? If you say, show me how to do the best roast chicken, and it came from, if you don't know where the source of that information, anybody ever spend money printing new magazines? Because that data could all be kind of mixed together in the output when you make the query. So it's an issue that I think is going to affect all of our lives. A year ago, I was not sure it was going to be as big a thing as it is. I'm definitely a believer, and I'm running as fast as I can to try to understand the implications, good and bad.
Okay, what's the good?
Well, the good is there are a whole lot of repetitive tasks that it could do a lot better. There's a lot of questions right now. Will it replace, for example, call centers? Can you have somebody? So far, it's not replaced the folks who answer the phone, but it can help the call center person be more effective in terms of what the right kind of responses would be. You've got people, that's a good side application. A downside application, and there are stories already where people have said, they've asked ChatGPT, let me tell you what my symptoms are, and it makes a diagnosis. And a lot of times it's right.
Well, except that it recently flunked a test.
It also could be wrong.
It recently flunked a test, a gastroenterology test. It flunked it, the certification test.
And that raises the question that if you self-diagnose on using one of these AIs, who's responsible if the outcome is potentially catastrophic? We have been using artificial intelligence under different terms for a long time. It's been called big data or machine learning, or the ability to be predictive. And a lot of our weapon systems about how can we identify is that a car or a tank, and then potentially go after it. That's basically machine learning using lots of data and absorbing it. What is different right now is this is kind of burst into everybody's mindset is these large language models like ChatGPT, and Google has one, Microsoft has obviously got the ChatGPT, there are others emerging, where it virtually can answer any kind of question you pose to it. And what's also, and this is the part where there's a real question, whether large language models can move from AI to what's called more generative, or actually AI that comes up with answers that are not simply predictive, but almost are self-learning as they go along. And the jury is still out on that, but whereas a year ago I thought, nah, that probably won't come to pass, I actually believe it could come to pass much sooner than any of us expect. And, I think we screwed up in Congress more than 10 or 15 years ago, not putting some guardrails around social media. And we've done nothing since that time, and we've got mental health issues with our kids. We've got challenges in terms of misinformation, disinformation. Boy, not getting it right on social media would pale in comparison if we don't get it right on putting some guardrails around artificial intelligence.
Okay, the bad.
The bad, and this is the part, Greta, where you've got some people predicting kind of an apocalyptic ending. I don't know, you and I may be old enough, most of your viewers may not be old enough to remember the old movie 2001: A Space Odyssey, way back in the 60s, where literally the computer, which was in today's version of AI, decided that they were no longer going to listen to the human beings and take over the mission and take over the ship. There was an example recently that was only a war game, but it was an example where they'd said they'd used AI to say, let's create a tool that will help identify a bad actor coming into an enemy space, and you'd still have the human being in there to make sure to make the ultimate decision. Well, the human being in this, again, this was just a test case, but this is what people say could potentially happen. The human being kept turning down the recommendation of the AI-generated answer to the point that AI in this test model decided, well, let me go after the human, or let me go after the control tower that was supposed to be able to launch the missile to take out what the AI had been trained to take out after. There's also a concern, and this is still real-time evolving. Are these AI models kind of the ultimate people pleaser? So if you're asking a question and you continue to ask a series of questions, will it start trying to give you answers that it thinks you want to get? And boy, oh boy, if you're talking about the potential for misinformation, disinformation, the challenges back to the predictive analysis around diagnosis on healthcare, that's a scary, scary potential outcome.
Right. What about our not-so-friendly nations like North Korea, China, Russia, Iran? I assume that they're working on artificial intelligence, and I assume that, that there's some national security considerations. Are they working with us? Are they worried about guardrails?
China clearly does not have the same sense of individual rights, privacy. The state and the Communist Party is the definitive defining entity, unfortunately, in China. And the Chinese people, we've seen them been taken advantage of in places like Hong Kong, the Uyghurs. And China, one of the early formulations around AI was who's going to be the most powerful is who has the most data. And China collects huge amounts of data. They have cameras literally everywhere. And they have all the information from their equivalents of Facebook, Google, and Amazon, the Alibabas, Badu's, Tencents. By Chinese law, has to give them, the government, their data. It becomes who's got the most data. It becomes who has the most computer power, and China's got equal to us in that. And then who can throw the most engineers. Now, that may not be a fully thought out analysis, but on those three criteria, China is close to our equal in this space. Now, we have a much more innovative society. Frankly, we're doing better with people testing out the model because the Chinese don't want to have people test out the model because they might ask what really happened at Tiananmen Square back in 1989. But China is a competitor in this space. And it raises then the issue that I've been trying to think through is, if scale is the most important thing, and who has the most data, who has the most compute power, could there ever be national security reasons for us to combine some of our independent efforts we have going on in this country? Now, I don't think that's the case, and I'm not advocating for that, but these are the kind of national security issues we have to think about. More specifically, I know we're short on time, but as chairman of the Intelligence Committee, we have more satellite images than we know what to do with. We have more NSA called signals intelligence that we know what to do with. We may have stolen more, thumb drives than we know what to do with. AI could be a tool to kind of sort through all of that to help us identify where is that key information that we've obtained. But again, it has an upside and a downside. None of this is easy.
Senator, thank you, sir.
Thank you.